there's something really interesting about stepping away from YouTube for a while, then stepping your way back into it and how awkward that feels. Like, I'm trying to figure out, do I even remember how to do a monthly wrap up any longer? Do I remember this? Do I have any idea of how this works, how this goes? And just like the first video I ever posted here, I'm just going to jump in and, hopefully some muscle memory will come back. Because honestly, I've read some books over the course of March and April because I didn't do one of these videos in March. I just didn't have the bandwidth. And as I'm clearing out and checking stuff off of like the life list, slowly re-entering this space, and am happy to do so. Happy. Let's talk a little bit about what I did get accomplished this month. It was not what I wanted to get accomplished. However, progress was still made in terms of things that I wanted to do. So let's take some stock. Let's see how this is working. I'm Nick. This is Dr. Cranky Pants Reads. And, some months you don't have a slump because of you. Sometimes it literally is everything else. Like everything else. March and April have been some intense months. But reading got done. So let's talk a little bit about what happened over the course of these 2 months. Let me catch you up. Let me give you some titles that I think you might be interested in. And let's check in with some of my goals, which is going to be a very humbling experience for me. But that's fine. Fine. Progress, no perfection. Always progress, not perfection. Okay. So over the course of March and April, I listened or read 18 books. 13 of those books came in March. 5 of those books came in April. That's right. 5. This is not necessarily a problem. However, I do have to finalize my reading list for children's literature soon, and life has gotten in the way of that. So I have some massive reading time blocked off over the course of the next month. Happy to do that because I need that class to go live by Q1, and that should give me time. I've got 2 books from middle grades that I want to share with you. I've got 1 memoir that I want to share, as well as 3 literary fiction titles. The first book that I want to talk about was a sleeper for me. This is The Many Assassinations of Samir, Seller of Dreams by Daniel Nayari. And I say this was a sleeper because there wasn't much buzz around this book. I had read his first book, Everything Sad is Untrue, and it was phenomenal. What an amazingly beautiful book. And I hadn't heard as much buzz about this book. And granted, it won a Newbery honor, but I didn't hear a lot of chatter about it. I didn't hear a lot of discussion around it. And that could be I'm not in circles that were talking about this. That could totally be a me problem. However, oh my gosh, this book was just amazing. To give you a little bit of a synopsis. So this book is historical fiction. It's set during the time of the Silk Road, and Samir is really this silver-tongued merchant who is known for spinning these tales and being really, really charming. That's his shtick. He is charming, not necessarily honest, but so charming. So charming. And he rescues a young monk who he then for the rest of the book calls Monkey from being publicly stoned. That's the kind of history that we're in for, people. But here's the catch. So Samir, he is not the most honest person, right? Remember that point? And he owes a lot of people a lot of things. He has screwed some people over. And thus, there are 6 assassins after Samir. 6 of them. 6 of them. All the while, Monkey is trying to figure out how to get his freedom back. He would love to go back and finish his work as a monk, though kind of got kicked out of mine. I think this book worked particularly well because of the strength of who Samir is as a character. He's not necessarily someone you would buy a rug from. However, he spins a good tale, and you're going to be curious about what he says next. So you would probably, follow him through the desert just to hear what he's going to say in the next instance. Additionally, Monkey as a character is just delightfully satisfying. He starts off very naive, very black and white. And as the book progresses, his world becomes all these shades of gray. And he realizes the cost of what happens when you're thinking in those binaries of good and evil, right and wrong, and what you miss out on. Neri just does a phenomenal job of pulling us through this novel. You know that there's 6 assassinations, and he uses that as a really fascinating narrative device throughout the entire book. It really draws you in. It keeps you engaged. And there are these moments of just incisive prose that this is a middle grades novel. And I was like, and there were moments where I was like, this is just so beautifully written. So beautifully written. And I think one of the tricks here is it's not going to be, I don't know that this is a book that the premise of it is going to be immediately grabbing for a lot of people. Oh, read this historical fiction novel about the Silk Road. No, seriously, read this historical fiction novel about the Silk Road. It is fascinating. Come for the story, stayed for the author's afterword where he talks about the research that went into this book, but really just a phenomenal read. I was not prepared for how much I enjoyed this book. Apparently, I had a thing for deep middle grade novels that I've been putting off reading for a while because my second share for you this month is Wolf Hollow by Lauren Wolk. I've read a bunch of her other work, and I don't know why it took me so long to get to Wolf Hollow. It follows Annabelle, who is in a Pennsylvania town during World War II, and she's very, very quiet. She's very, very meek. She has a sense of justice about her. And so when a new classmate comes, her name is Betty, she wants to, welcome her to the community, welcome her to the school. But Betty's a terrible bully, like borderline sociopathic. And so Betty takes this bullying to an extreme level. And Wolf just does this beautiful job of bringing in the racial ethnic tensions in Pennsylvania in that time during World War II into play in ways that didn't take over the interpersonal tensions within the story, but magnified it, provided it with nuance, and it was just such a powerful book. The other thing that I really appreciated about this book is, yes, it is a book about bullying, but it is also a book about complicity. Complicity of other kids, complicity on adults. What happens when people don't intervene, and how the adults of those who are affected by that bullying because adults didn't intervene, kids will be kids, whatnot. What happens to them? It's a really fascinating book about kids who have to grow up and make impossible moral choices because the adults in their lives failed them. There is another character that I haven't mentioned yet, and his name is Toby. And he is a World War I veteran who returned home and has been struggling with PTSD before there was really a name for it. And so he is kind of a vagabond, and Annabelle's family takes him in, and he becomes one of the targets for Betty's bullying. And he is this really interesting symbol of both kindness, but also danger. That I found the tension that character embodied to be really, really delicious. This is a book that gives you a lot to think about. It's kind of like if To Kill a Mockingbird were written for middle grade readers. That's the kind of caliber that we're working with here. There's a little bit more quiet rage in this one, actually, than I think there is in To Kill a Mockingbird. I love when in middle grades novels, characters are allowed to feel anger and not have to learn a lesson from it, not have to turn it into a good vibe. If I were to summarize the theme of this book, I think it would be really about the cost of staying silent and the bravery, the internal fortitude required of someone to not stay silent. Wolf Hollow, highly recommend it. I believe a sequel-ish book came out. I've got it on my list to pick up. So if I can find it somewhere, I'm going to pick it up because I'm not going to wait on it. I waited too long on this book. I wish I would pick it up earlier. The memoir that I read this month that was just so enjoyable was The Harder I Fight, The More I Love You by Nico Case, which Middle Cyclone is just, like such a great album. I have loved Nico Case ever since that album. I know that's the one that got me into her. I have really appreciated her backlog, her work with the New Pornographers, the Canadian supergroup. I just find stories about folks who have gained some level of like fame, but are working constantly. I think about Lauren Graham's memoirs. I think about Kelly Bishop's memoirs. I think about Brandi Carlile's memoir. These folks who have risen to some prominence, but there's still some level of grind to it. And I really enjoy that story. What I loved about Nico Case is how she lays out her life story and all of its complexities and really approaches it from this interesting, interconnected set of vignettes that is somewhat temporal and unfold over time, but also you get some moving in and out of time as well, which is really, really fascinating. Nico Case's life is incredibly interesting, starting with the fact that her mother faked her death, like literally faked her death. And so Nico, as a kid, mourned her mother, and then poof, her mom was back. And this is not a spoiler. This is all happening very, very early in the memoir. It's kind of intense that is the system under which Nico develops as a person. I appreciate a working memoir. As she's working with multiple bands, trying to figure out her albums, trying to figure out where her sound is, she never romanticizes it. It is always work. It's always a rough life. And I appreciate how she both accounts for some of the luck that she had. Like, this is, again, going back to Ina Garten's book, one of the things that bothered me was either when the luck happens, that's really easy for some people. And Nico, to her credit, did a phenomenal job of really laying out for people who might be looking at her life as a musician as a template for their own, where things out of her control happened to align with the work she was putting in. I loved that. Absolutely loved it. She doesn't make her life as an artist overly romantic. She talks about being broke. She talks about being exhausted. She talks about being emotionally just hollowed out. And I'm here for it. I'm here for that gamut of experience. It is totally a memoir that doesn't feel like a redemption arc. It feels like if there is redemption to be had, one, we're not quite sure for what. And two, it's still in process. It's still in process. It's moody and there's some tension here. Leave some space for discomfort. It's also interesting how she approaches fame because there's some level for her of disconnect from it. She's always giving it kind of this side eye. She does music not because she wants to be famous. She does music because she has to. That's the way that she expresses herself and is so utterly clear about that. Her musical career has something she's had to build in order to survive. I would say that the entire memoir is poetically blunt. She has these beautiful turns of phrase and these analogies and these metaphors and ways of thinking about stuff. That's beautiful, but it's not overly precious. It feels like she's approached this book with the same intention she has around her music. It's not like, oh, I had a hard time and then I won a Grammy. I survived and I made stuff and I still don't know what to do with all of it. Same, girl. Same. So, Nico Case, if you are into a musical memoir that is going to have you sit with some tension, it's going to have you sit with some gritty realities. It's not going to, wind up all neat and tidy. She is messy on purpose. Like, the moments of beauty in this book are totally worth the payoff. It's a great memoir. So let's get into some literary fiction. Full disclosure, I have loved Anna Quindlen ever since high school, ever since reading One True Thing and Black and Blue. I have loved Anna Quindlen. And so after Annie, her newest book just had to get read. So let me give you a little bit of background. The book follows this family and Annie's best friend as they work or don't through the grief and the absence of the person who held their life together. What do you do when the person who coordinated your life is gone? What do you do when the person you called or you visited in order to seek counsel or reassurance that you're making the right decision or to tell you to not make the right decision is gone? Quindlen just is a master at pulling these quotidian moments apart. She's always been, as an author, fascinated by family and what holds them together and what pulls them apart. And so death, it feels, is kind of her latest experiment in playing with understanding how those relationships unfold and come together and pull apart. And in this book, you get multiple perspectives. So you get the kids, the husband, the best friend. Each of them is processing the loss of this one person in really different ways. For a book where Annie no longer appears after page 5, she is present throughout this book. Nobody writes about families like Quinlan does. She gets the domestic minutia down. The missing coffee cup, the quiet house, the fact that all of these people who are grieving Annie are grieving unevenly. Some of them not even grieving at all. There's a storyline that follows the eldest daughter who ends up in this position because of the father's inability to get his head wrapped around what it now means to be the adult in his family, where she has to take on all of these responsibilities that should not be hers. And the people who she should be able to rely on aren't necessarily reliable. It's a really painful storyline because of the fact that there are all of these well-meaning adults around her, but none of them are showing up. They're saying they will, but they don't. She loses these parts of herself, and that's just massively unfair. It's unjust. Be prepared. Bring your handkerchief. The next book that I want to talk about is a book that was on my 12 reads for 2025 list. This is Mary Gates' Two Girls, Fat and Thin. I was not prepared because this is not a friendship novel. Priscilla, evening reader, tried to warn me, and I just didn't listen. And I should always listen to Priscilla. You should always listen to Priscilla. Why am I not listening to Priscilla? Because this is not a friendship novel. This is a collision course. This is two people meeting, Dorothy, Justine, and just exploding, both carrying a massive amount of trauma and shaped by this kind of like the Fountainhead-esque kind of philosophy about life that was both enraging but also fascinating to read about. It feeds their thoughts about feminism, some of which I really resonated with, and other pieces I was like, girl, what's up? What are you doing? What's happening? And so you end up with these two really unreliable narrators who are really speaking their own pain into existence. And yeah, I was not prepared. But I am so thankful to have read this novel. Gateskill, I have not read her before, but I'm assuming from what I know about her as an author now, a little bit of research, she is brutal. She is brilliant, but she will cut to the quick. She is not afraid of anyone's sensibilities when those sensibilities mask what actually needs to be said, what needs to be written. And if I'm really honest, there were times where this book was hard to read. It was hard to read, but necessary, because really she didn't care whether I was comfortable or not. She didn't care. 0 Fs were given around this. She really was more concerned with, do you feel something? Because these characters have had to feel so much that they've either turned off feeling, or everything they feel is exacerbated to the nth degree. The philosophy in this book is fascinating. You get this weird, like, objectivist cult, and how it shapes both girls is just really interesting and adds this, I don't, is it satire or is it not satire? It's satirical, allegedly, potentially satirical, but it's sharp as all get out. Additionally, the way that the book is sandwiched, the way that the book is structured, you get meeting in New York City in their present day, and then you end in New York City, their present day, and in the middle is them living their childhood, growing up, becoming the women who sandwich the book. It's this really interesting character study. You have these dual pathways. Are they connecting, or are they destroying each other? How does that function? How does that work? I think you could think you're reading about trauma and you're reading about feminism, but really it becomes this meditation and critique of really power and performance and the kind of stories that we let people tell us, and the kinds of stories that we let people tell about us. This is literary fiction with brass knuckles on, and it doesn't care if you get knocked out. It doesn't care if you get knocked out. I'm so happy I read it. I don't know that I will reread it, but I might, because I do still have questions. So glad that the bookseller at Shakespeare and Company recommended it for me. My next book is A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer, which I gotta say was a delicious piece of literary candy. Kathy Balance is a Grim Reaper. She is charged with ensuring that folks who die pass on over. She's part of a larger bureaucracy, larger corporation. She has, unfortunately, is death that she has to go to attend, where things go awry, things go wrong, and suddenly she is being haunted by this teen's ghost, and working really, really hard to make sure that he can pass over. There's a time limit when your body dies to get your spirit into the afterworld that Cappy is very aware of. And so she's trying to figure out what's happening with this mysterious death incident, all the while also trying to wrangle her own life, which is a complete and utter mess. She has recently split up with her husband, who she still kind of loves, but isn't really. I'm going to be real honest. This is the one part of the book that I didn't quite get. I didn't quite understand why they weren't together. Her life is just kind of falling apart. She has to manage her own chaos, but also try to figure out what's happening with this death, why this soul can't pass over. If this were like a micro genre, I think it's like paranormal, cozy mystery, which was exactly what I needed at the time. I needed something where I didn't have to think too much, tasty literary candy, and this was totally it. Kathy is the kind of character who's very relatable. She is kind of a mess, but also like figures it all out. And I also appreciated how it's a funny book, but doesn't make light of death. Sometimes you need a book where the heroine is awkward and things are chaotic and they have no clue what's going on, but, it still gets done, with a sight and a can-do attitude. So, enjoyable. Those are my 6 recommendations from the books that I read over the course of March and April. Let's talk about what I'm currently reading, shall we? I have 3 books that I'm currently reading, 1 that I'm currently listening to. The first off, A Boy's Own Story. This is Edmund White. This book is actually my March book for top 10 for 12 books I want to read in 2025. So I'm still chugging along, not making as much progress as I would like, but still making progress. I'm also reading The Troubles. This is by J.G. Farrell. I picked this up in LA when I was there for spring break because I ran out of books to read. And I just haven't had enough time to give it. We have a guest who just couldn't stop whining. Don't know why. Don't know what she wants. You have food, you have water, you had treats. Salmon treats. Oh, you just want to be famous? Oh, sweet dog. Okay. So, Troubles by J.G. Farrell. It covers a period of history that I am not as familiar with as I should probably be. It follows a major who's returning from World War One, and he's returning to Ireland where he has a fiance who he kind of knows. It's weird how they met. As he's returning, the troubles are starting in Ireland, where English rule is coming into question. And that's been really fascinating to read. I haven't read a lot of narratives that cover that particular period of time. It's a little uneven. There are definitely portions of the book that are more engaging than others, but I have enjoyed it. I just wish I had more time to sit down with it. But probably we'll want to talk a little bit more about it later. So let's talk. Are you done? Are you done? Huh? Are you done, Lumpy Stace Princess? Yeah? Yeah? Oh. So Phyllis is now outside. She spent half the evening out there, so I don't know what else is left to do out there. But okay. Let's talk about where I am with the 12 books I wanted to read in 2025. Because if you're going to make the video, you might as well hold yourself accountable, right? Spoiler, I'm not where I thought I would be. This is my March book, and we're closing out April. But that's okay. That's okay. I still have a clear pathway to, and not necessarily get all of them done, but I know what the pathway forward is. So I do want to catch up and read What Now? Little Man, What Now? I do want to get back on track. I'm going to get through Little Man, What Now? Hans Fallada. I loved Alone in Berlin and really, really am excited to dig into this. And my May book is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. I don't know if this is going to get done in May. I may look, and to keep me on target somewhat, I may look and see if there's a shorter book in later months that I can swap out and make this more of a June kind of read, because it's a long one. It's got some pages. It's got some pages, but I still want to get all of them read. You do what you can. You do what you can with what you got. This is what I did. So, what have you been reading that has brought you joy? Tell me what your favorite book was this month, and what book are you looking forward to reading next? And as always, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Even though, you never know when the next one's going to be, because right now I'm just random. And I'm random release guy. Random release guy. All right. See you in the next one. Bye.